Well, we've taken you to the world of sports, the world of politics, and of course the world of business. And time now for our interview of the day. And today we're talking about enhancing land under irrigation in Kenya. And that is coming at the tail end of this bulletin, which is right now. Well, thank you so very much indeed for joining us tonight. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you for your time. We'll see you again on Thursday next week. But before I sign off, Kenya targets to increase the acreage under irrigation from the current 776,000 acres to 1.2 million acres by the year 2027 by leveraging data or large dams as well as household and community water harvesting program. The National Irrigation Authority Chief Executive Officer Charles Mwea says among irrigation projects lined up is the 37 billion shillings Galana Dam in Kilifi and Tana River counties. Mwea sat down with our reporter Karen Jenga, and now she's going to share with us part of that interview. Otherwise, enjoy the viewing. Bye now.
Kenya's irrigation sector plays a crucial role in ensuring food security, improving agricultural productivity, and also mitigating the impact of climate change. National Irrigation Authority has been leading the efforts to expand the irrigation infrastructure as well as improve water resource management and also integrate modern technology into irrigation systems. Tonight, we talk about the irrigation sector with the CEO himself, Engineer Charles Mwea, who is joining us tonight to look at the mandate of the National Irrigation Authority as well as the status of the irrigation sector in the country. Welcome to the program, Engineer Charles.
Thank you, Warimo.
Now we start off with the mandate of the National Irrigation Authority before we look at the status of the irrigation sector in the country.
The main, the main role and actually why the National Irrigation Authority does exist is to provide and ensure there is irrigation infrastructure in this country to be able to provide water for production. What I'll tell you is that, 85% or thereabout of this country is ASAL. That means the amounts of rainfalls which are received across the whole of this landmass in Kenya cannot sustain irrigation farming. So our main role is to make sure that we harness the water, undertake, construction, development of the irrigation systems so that we are able to convey the water so that the farmers can engage in production and farming with an ultimate goal of course, ensuring food security in this country, which has been very elusive, evasive. And I'll tell you that in the last year alone, the food imports were in the excess of 500 billion Kenya shillings. And this is what we want to do so that we can cut down on these imports in this country.
Okay. And what is the current status of the irrigation sector, and also what is the land under irrigation?
Currently, what we have under irrigation is about 700,076 acres. That is under irrigation farming. And in the short term, in the next 4 years or thereabout, based on our strategic plan, we want to push that on a bit up to about 1 million. So we are talking of targeting to move from what we have now, about 776, to about 1 million acres in the next 4 years, ultimately to about 1.2 million acres.
Okay.
Yes.
And that is incorporated in the recent investment plan that you launched.
Yes.
You're targeting to raise about 598 billion shillings. How are you going to raise those funds, and also how will the investment, or rather the guide of the investment plan?
When you look at the NISIP, there are 5 key distinct pathways. And I think 3 of those pathways are very distinct on how we intend to, to attract and, get financing from the private sector. And one of those, when you talk of the first pathway, that is FLEED. FLEED, we are talking of blended finance. And I think we have been doing this. We have already a running program in Mount Kenya, whereby we are partnering with the Equity Bank, whereby farmers give 50%. Then the government also gives 50% in terms of a loan. So in terms of actualizing, we intend to partner with the farmers, whereby we on board and we bring on, financiers who can support the farmers. Then the farmers can also now contribute and also, engage in infrastructure development. Then when you look at the issue of now construction and engagement in big mega projects, we are talking of now partnering with the private sector and attracting financing. And these are like now the PPP models, whereby we attract financing from the investors. They bring their finance, construct the infrastructure, operate the systems, and of course they recoup their cost of investment.
Okay. With the plan that you've just talked about, how many acres are you planning to put under irrigation, both in the short and the long term?
Nisi per se, from the very initial target, we are looking at about 1 million acres. So that we move from the current, 776 to about 1.7 million. But ultimately, based on the potentials which we have with water harvesting, we can go up to 3 million. It's a mixture of all, the models we can employ. First of all, we are talking of blended finance, what we call fleet, because it's farmer-led irrigation, development. And whereby now we are talking of farmers contributing and also the government also supporting the same systems. Then now we look at a system whereby it's a kind of a PPP framework, whereby now, investors come on board, they do invest their money, do the infrastructure, then they coup investment from from the proceeds of revenues which have been generated from the systems. That way, of course, they will be able to recoup their part of investment. Then the infrastructure is there, and we can engage in irrigation development. Okay.
I'd like to hear from you on the progress of these key irrigation programs that you're being implemented under your authority. We have Mwea, we have Bura, there are a number. I'd like you to give us each the status updates.
Let me start with Galana, because we are known for Galana, and I think it's a project which now we have managed to get back on track. Already Galana, we already have an investor who has come on board to do production. And we have agreed, together with the partnership with ADC, we have a lease agreement where we have leased about 40,000 acres. And actually, starting this April, they are going to commence production on the area which is already under infrastructure of about 10,000 acres. So that is starting straight away from April this year. Then additionally, I think we are also now looking into ways in which we can do a dam. And we have plans at an advanced stage to attract, financing from the private sector so that we can do a Galana Dam. Galana Dam is about 300 or thereabout million cubic meters of water. And with it, we are going to put about 200,000 acres under irrigation. And once that is actualized, actually, we are looking at a scenario whereby we are going to cut so much in terms of maize deficit in this country. Then from there, we go to Bura. Bura, of course.
Let me stay with Galana for a bit. Yes. Whether they are local or foreign investors, and when it comes to the leasing years, what numbers are we talking about?
Okay, the farm is Selu, which is local, I would want to say that. And in terms of the leasing period, the PPP Act is 30 years initially, which, of course, can be extended. Yes.
And how much will be invested in the project?
Well, we look at the government capex. In terms of what the government has already invested in that project, is about almost 7 billion Kenya shillings to date. Then you look at the investor is bringing on board an additional 12 billion Kenya shillings to develop an additional 10,000 for a total of about 20,000.
Does this include the Galana Dam?
No, Galana Dam is separate.
Okay.
The total cost of Galana Dam is about 37 billion Kenya shillings, or thereabout. And I think this is what we are saying, we are attracting financing now from the private sector to be able to support this.
Okay.
Yes.
What of Bura Irrigation Scheme? Where are we?
Bura Irrigation Scheme, as you could be aware, is a project which we commissioned. His Excellency the President commissioned the Bura Gravity, last month. And the Bura Irrigation Project has a potential of doing about 176,000 acres, which is really, we call a gazetted area. So in the short term, what we are saying is that with the commissioning of the gravity system, we can straight away put about 40,000 acres under production. And this can be scaled almost up to about 100,000 in the long run. And at the moment, we have already attracted about 3 investors who are coming on board to do rice farming and sugarcane production. But predominantly what we are reserving now for the farmers themselves is the initial about 15,000 acres, just for the farmers, for the local farmers to engage in production. And beyond that now, where the farmers are not able to produce on, is when we are bringing on board now the investors to be able to utilize that, so that we can now probably make higher productivity from the water resource which we have in Bura, rather in Bura, in the scheme.
What are the timelines?
We are talking of already 2 of them. They are already on the ground. Actually, some equipments have already been imported. And when you look at what we have agreed with them, straight away, I think from next year, they will get in full-scale production. At the moment, they are doing what we call trials, whereby we have allocated each one of them about 700 acres for them to do trial test their technologies, and probably be able to optimize on the production they want to engage on.
Okay.
Yes.
When it comes to Mwea irrigation,
yes,
you talked of rice farming
yes,
being done at Bura irrigation
yes,
scheme.
Yes.
Are you planning to increase the acreage under rice farming at Mwea?
Mwea already with the Galana Dam, which of course we already finished, it's already operating. We have more or less hit the maximum of around 35,000 acres in Mwea irrigation scheme. And beyond there, we will need to construct another dam. But that is not in our plans in the short term. What we are planning now is to optimize already the Galana Dam, whereby at the moment we have about 30,000. So we would want to finish construction of infrastructure on an additional 5,000 for a maximum of about 35,000. And with this 35,000, we can also be able to do 2 crops in a year. That is about putting about almost 70,000 acres under production. And with Mwea alone, we are looking at a scenario whereby we are getting a production of almost 296,000 metric tons of rice. And with that, of course, the national deficit of about 700,000 metric tons will be making milestones towards, actualizing in terms of bridging this gap.
Earlier on, you talked of integrating modern technology, and you talked of investors right now testing the technology. I'd like to hear how you're incorporating technology in agriculture production in the irrigation master plan.
Great. Now, when you look at the systems, predominantly which we are put in Galana, and also we are going to put up in Bura, most of them are called what we call precision irrigation systems. You will find that we are making use of center pivot systems, which most of them you'll find a single center pivot can cover up almost up to about 200 acres, one of them. And that is what we are going to deploy mostly. But now when you look in terms of technology, especially we are benchmarked with, other systems, especially in Egypt, whereby these systems are operating, is that you will employ a lot of technology in terms of operating these systems in terms of water application. So most of the activities will be remote controlled. Those are the kind of technologies the farmers, or rather the producers are coming on board with. In addition, in terms of water use and in terms of efficient systems, you look at us looking into the future in which all the canals probably will be lined. We are going to line them. Then, of course, I'll tell you that with the launch, or rather commissioning of the Bura Gravity, we switched off the gensets, which have been using, diesel fuels. So we are looking at a way in which, in future, we are going to have solar systems still to operate the same pumping stations, so that we can make use of solar and have, environmentally friendly systems operating with us.
Okay. And yes, this whole plan, master plan, how many farmers are you planning to empower with increased irrigation?
Well, when we look at in terms of the targets and in terms of what we are planning, first of all, now in Bura, we will, of course, settle the whole of about 7,000 to 10,000 farmers in Bura. All of them, we are going to settle them in the farm so that they can have some 1, 2, 3, 4 acres for them to undertake in terms of production. Then when we look at in terms of now the investors who are coming on board, we are giving them about 100,000 acres. And when you look in terms of how many people can they employ in terms of farmers, every acre we are talking of employing of about 5 to 10 in terms of, labor input. So when you do the maths now, if you put about 100,000, you are talking of almost creating about those number of jobs. That's almost about 5,000 jobs alone in Bura. So that is the effect in terms of the economy. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe in a nutshell, you can share with us the status update of the National Expanded Irrigation Program and the Turkana Irrigation Program.
The National Expanded Irrigation Program, we are talking of upwards of about 250 projects, number of distinct projects, which are cut across about 43 counties across this country. And this project alone, we have been able to put about 300,000 acres under irrigation using this program alone. And this is the only program actually which you will find across all the counties in the country. Then when you are talking about Turkana is one of those projects or one of those areas with very massive potential in terms of irrigation. But in the short term, at the moment, we have our what I may call our schemes. We have our Katilu irrigation scheme, which farmers are engaging in production of maize. Then we have Lokubai and Elelea and Mororem irrigation schemes, which are also under production, and they are producing, maize and other crops. So in total in Turkana, when you look at what we have been able to put under irrigation, it's about 12,000 acres at the moment. But currently we have Nauros and Nandoto. These are two projects which are ongoing also. They will put an additional 1,000 acres under irrigation. Then Takwel, we have been able to engage a consultant who has been able to come with a master plan or a way forward in terms of using water from the Takwel River and the Takwel Dam. So we are talking of a possibility of putting another additional 30,000 acres under irrigation using the Takwel Dam. Then we also are doing what I will call a master plan to be able to identify other sources of water so that we can be able to put an additional area under irrigation. What I will tell you is that in terms of groundwater, of course, we are still trying to find ways in which we can exploit also the massive groundwater which is in Turkana. Yes.
What's the target for putting acres under irrigation in Turkana?
I could talk of about, we are targeting now moving from the current, what we have around 15,000 to about 30,000, yeah? In the next, we don't talk of 3-4 years. Yes.
Household and community public irrigation scheme and other PPP initiatives.
Household, these are water plants which are normally done at household levels with capacities of about 1,000 to 3,000. Normally, these ones are drought mitigation, in terms of interventions, whereby these farmers are able to irrigate at least an acre. And what happens is that they will just provide what we call supplemental irrigation to support farmers in 1 acre. In total, we have harvested about 34 million cubic meters of water using this program, and our target is to go all the way up to around 125 million cubic meters of water in the long run. So the other one is Ola, which is actually very close to, it's in Tana River, very close to Bura. We have about a potential of about 12,000 acres. We also normally grow their maize and rice. Then, of course, there's the Pekera in Baringo. This is a project where we do as a lot of productivity in terms of seed maize. And, in this country, we are working with Kenya Seed. We have about 3,500 acres under production. Then we have the Aero irrigation scheme in Kisumu. This one, we also grow rice. In total, we have a potential of about 15,000 acres, which we have developed around that area. Then there is the West Kano, also very close to the shores of Lake Victoria, another capacity of about 12,000 in terms of production. Then from there, we go to Bunyala. Bunyala is in Busia. It's one of those other public schemes where we have put in, currently we have about 3,000 acres under rice farming. Is one of those projects which we are going to expand under the Lower Nzoia irrigation project, which will be done by September this year. With that done, we will expand that project to about 10,000 acres in Busia and also now in Siaya, a bit of rice farming.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, in a policy aimed at making irrigation schemes more sustainable, there's a proposal to increase scheme fees to make it more sustainable. I'd like to hear from you, how will this affect farmers?
I would want to say is actually operation and maintenance fee. And when you look at it, and you look at the current fee which farmers are paying, and the way in terms of inflation, in terms of the cost, how things have changed out here, it is no longer tenable and sustainable to continue with the current fees as they are. What we have done is that we have done what we call a lot of community and farmer consultation and participation and engagements, and we have left it to them, because what I want to indicate is that O&M fee, which is normally charged to the farmers, this is a fee which goes directly to the farmers. It does not come to the books of the National Irrigation Authority, farmers and the minister. And I think what they have told us, it is no longer attainable, it is not sufficient for them to engage in operation and maintenance. Now, we leave it to the farmers themselves to decide, and I think in some schemes they have already agreed, especially the schemes in Western Kenya. They have more or less agreed on fees, but we are still yet to engage farmers very actively in Mwea and also in Bura for them to be able to agree to the fee. But one thing I would want to mention is that National Irrigation Authority, when you look at all the schemes, we are the ones who have been paying for the diesel in terms of water supply. I've been spending about 10 million Kenya shillings in Ola every month, and also in Bura every month before the project was commissioned. But now we are remaining with Ola in terms of support, and now the other projects in Western Kenya. So we want to believe the best way to go for sustainability is for the farmers to be able to support and the systems to be able to be self-sustaining, so that we don't continue using the exchequer to support the farmers in production.
What is the proposed fee?
Well, I think we have figures which are cutting across. When you look at Bura, what we had proposed is about 5,000, 5,000 Kenya shillings in a production cycle. So it is ranging between 5,000 to 8,000 in Mwea because of the double crop aspect, where they pay initially 5,000, then an additional 3,000 because of the double crop.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, what would be the role of farmers' cooperatives in the investment plans that you have?
The cooperatives now are very key, because you see, these are the avenues. And one of the challenges where our farmers have been having a bit of problems is in terms of marketing. So we are looking at the cooperatives coming on board to organize the farmers so that they can be able to, connect them with the markets, and the farmers are able to sell the produce. Then that way, we don't have a challenge with the availability of market. And also farmers having stocks, holding stocks in their stores, which are attracting, and even I think in terms of losses, which could continue attracting losses. So we look at a scenario where we have very organized marketing frameworks in place through these cooperatives. Yeah, with farmers.
Okay, at the beginning of the interview, you talked of cutting our import bill. From your estimation, from where you sit, how much will we cut our food import through increased irrigation?
Well, I think, first of all, we'd want to wipe all of it in the long run. But I think when we give ourselves in terms of targets, so could we talk of just cutting it by half in the next 4 years? And the current administration first term, then eventually, ultimately, in the second term, then we wipe it all of it, so that by the time we hit 2030, 2031, we are not majorly importing, predominantly the major, what I call food security crops. And this one I'm referring to maize, which we have no reason to continue importing maize. We have no reason to continue importing, rice, and also the oil crops. Because the plans which we are putting in place, even in Galana, and where we are going to engage the private investors, we're also going to bring on board, the production of oil crops.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you planning to enroll more private players in investing in the traditional schemes?
Well, I think what we have done, we've left it open to the investors in terms of where there are opportunities. And when you look at our schemes, the biggest potential for investors now is in Bura. But I think when you look at it now, with also now Galana coming on board, we have a lot of potential also there in Galana in terms of investments. Yes.
When you look at the policy and the legislative changes, are there any changes that are needed to enhance irrigation development in Kenya?
I think when you look at the Act and in terms of even what the investors are asking for. Because one of the things they ask me is that, do you have a balance sheet, you know, for us to be able to enter into an agreement, look at your books and evaluate, and thus be a little bit comfortable. So we are looking at a scenario whereby the National Irrigation Authority, also through the Act, also is given the mandate also to engage in bulk water sales, such that we can be able to develop the, you know, the dams in partnership, in collaboration with the investors, and be able to make them be assured that we can be able to repay through sales, the water sales. And eventually, us, of course, we are the ones now to sell to the investors who, you know, get the water. Then eventually now us, we pay you, we pay the investors. Yes.
Okay. As we come to a close, we have the budget 2025, 2026 coming up. Are you looking at increased budgetary allocation?
Actually, the main issue now is to attract money from the private sector, the private capital rather. And I think with the plans which are in place, I want to believe, and with all these, you know, elaborate, you know, measures we are taking, the number of, you know, investors who have expressed interest, we are going to attract a lot of that in terms of infrastructure development. In terms of the exchequer, yes, of course, there is what we have continued to receive, but nevertheless, I think we do appreciate the competing, you know, the competing demands in this country. So we want to focus more now on the private capital. Yes, yes.
Thank you, Engineer Charles.
Yes,
well,
thank you so much.
That is where we put a cap on tonight's interview. As you've had from the engineer himself, Kenya has about 700,000 acres under irrigation, and they're planning to increase that to about 1 million acres under irrigation in the next 4 years. My name is Irene Mojenga. We take you back to studio.